her. How's that?
Oh, you're giant happy at 11.
Oh, no.
You're 70 inches.
You're very telegenic.
Yes, you are.
Hello.
Okay, we are live on YouTube.
All right.
Okay, so the first thing on the agenda is the update on town facility study, including shelter locations.
So I will take the lead, but before I jump into that, I just thought I'd give you a small update on a facilities incident we had Friday morning around 2:30 in the morning. We had one of our heating boilers. We have multiple hot water systems in our high school. And in the west building, which is the gymnasium, cafeteria, we had a failure of one of our hot water heaters. It caused damage to it's on the second floor, so if anybody had a hot water heater that ever failed, you can see it causes a mess, but they're bigger than the homeowner one, so it causes a bigger mess. So the damage it caused, of course, at 2:30 in the morning, we brought our guys out with equipment to, clean the mess. The damage it caused, just to bring our guys in and do the repairs in the middle of the night is, costly. Repairs to the water heater, controls, parts. We're going to probably do some additional plumbing, hopefully to try to curb if it ever fails again, to keep the damage to a minimal. Ceiling tiles, were damaged and will need to be replaced. If the weight room floor is ruined, right now it's sort of buckling. This is the weight room in the west building. It's not our big weight room. It's a smaller weight room off the gym. If the floor can't be repaired, that will be costly. On the second floor, rugs got wet and they're stained as of today. So if we can't remove the stains, we might have to replace the carpet in the orchestra room, the music room that's right up next to the band room, and then room 510, which is our new high-tech room.
Oh, no.
It just came into the doorway in about 4 or 5 feet. It did not flood the room. And we have carpet tiles in the new room, so we'd only have to replace some carpet tiles. But in the music room, we'd have to replace the whole carpet because you can't replace half the stain. It just doesn't work that way. Some athletic equipment got wet, mostly weights and stuff like that, so that can just be dried off. No damage, but there was a treadmill, a couple treadmills and some bikes. We're going to evaluate that, whether they cause damage or not. Right now, we're just in the drying out and, trying to see what damage has been caused. I'm meeting with the insurance adjuster tomorrow. We've had much more significant floods than this. It's not insignificant, but, the big numbers are going to be the flooring. If we have to replace the flooring or some of the athletic equipment. If the athletic equipment's good and the flooring doesn't need to be replaced, I don't think we'll meet our deductible, which is under $5,000. But if the flooring and the equipment needs to be replaced, I think we'll go over. Any questions about that? It's just a general update.
The boiler itself was able to be repaired.
It was not the boiler. The hot water heaters are little mini boilers. They heat the water. So they're individual units. So it was actually a failure of a part that made it overheat. And then it did what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to, instead of get really, really hot, it blows off the water. And that causes the damage. So the mechanical parts, control parts, will be able to fix and repair it. It's running and up and running. It was up and running Friday, not perfectly, but enough to get the hot water. So it'll be able to be repaired.
That was my question. I was just wanting Phil's update on the current status of hot water for that.
The hot water was going as of Friday, not perfectly, but, acceptably safe, but with a lot of manual labor, turning it off and off instead of electronically on and off. We manually turn it on and off, get it hot, let them use it, then heat it up again. Versus when we get all the parts, it'll be automatically turning on and off. And it has a lot of safe devices put into it. So something like this, worst that happen is, overheats and spills water all over the floor.
Happy, do you have any questions? So my only other question / concern is, this is our baby building. This is our youngest building. Is it early for problems like this to be happening? I mean, I know it's really not that young, given that it's been, 18 years?
2003 we moved in, right?
Okay.
September of that, 2003.
Okay,
So the short answer, this is a common mechanical failure.
Okay.
It could be 10 years old, it could be 8 years old, however many years old. This is a mechanical failure. A part failed, and there was a safety device that made it not get worse. So we're going to have these failures on a brand new building, or
Okay, that
we-
makes me feel better.
we've had other problems, and we will continue to have problems. It's not a crisis. I'm not concerned. We'll fix it. We'll look into the other ones. We'll make sure that there's, if we saw any common problem that we thought we need to look into other systems, we would, but we don't.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you for getting up in the middle of the night or early in the morning, however you want to slice it, but
Yeah, we won't go there. My guys had it under control. We had 4 or 5 guys there, but for some reason.
I'm not sure how many superintendents would have done that, though. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it wasn't even one of our worst floods. And
Knock on wood, please.
I don't
I mean,
remember
come
ever
on.
superintendent coming out before, but it was partly my fault. I didn't answer his phone. So I'll take the heat on that. My
We're
guys,
sleeping.
my guys were there. They weren't even gonna call me until the superintendent showed up. And then they said, oh my God, we're gonna call Bill.
Bill, you didn't have to spill everything.
Oh,
But I didn't answer their call either. So it happens.
noted.
So noted.
Okay.
Happens when you go to bed at midnight and they call it 2:30.
Oh, dear.
I didn't hear it. So the next item, of course, is the shelter. Just a little background, we did a facility study, including a shelter. The facility study looked at all the schools, all the town facilities for shelters. It came up with some recommendations. The recommendations were Brown School, the high school, and Folsom for 3 potential shelters, or 3 shelters to meet the 10% of this, 10% of the town.
So you said, I'm sorry, you said Brown, Folsom, the third one in the right?
Brown, Folsom, and the high school.
Nice.
So the town has 18,000 people. If you were to design a shelter, it would be 10%. So that would be 1,800. Thank you. High math here. 1,800. So to do 1,800, you would have one in North Madison, one in down here, and then the high school would be a overflow. So you have 3. With the shelter that we've had for many years, it doesn't even come close to that. I think the committee decided that they thought if one shelter, the number 1 recommendation would be Folsom, would maybe address our needs. Plus, we don't have to abandon the ones we already have. So we would actually have potentially 3 shelters, the new one and the 2 existing ones for overflow.
Which is the gym and the senior center?
No, the gymnasium here at the town campus is our primary shelter. The North Madison Congregational Church has always been a shelter. The town supplies it with a generator, and it's not owned by the town. That was one of the reasons they recommended moving it to the Brown School. But in all my years here, it's been activated, but I don't think anybody's ever used it. We haven't talked to the North Madison Congregational Church that I know, but I don't think they're kicking us out.
Okay.
So the thought was, let's enhance the Folsom School. The complication about the Folsom School is you just can't put a generator there. The electrical and the mechanical stuff is 1960s. So it's a little more complicated than just putting a generator in there. You'd have to upgrade the systems. So the intention of the committee was to ask the Board of Education and the Facilities Committee to recommend and accept the shelter at Folsom, and that to have it part of the renovations as proposed in your referendum. So how are we going to fund it and how it goes forward and all the pieces that we put in there. The facility committee for the town of Madison has a facility working committee. It's a group that makes recommendations. And they thought that just a generator might be acceptable and not the rest of the amenities that were proposed. So that's what they're asking the Board of Education to consider. I'm happy to take questions or bring out a lot more data if you are interested.
So you're asking this committee to recommend to accept the recommendation or vote on the recommendation to bring to the full board on accepting Folsom as a new shelter location and enhance the mechanicals at referendum.
Yes.
And if the referendum fails, which it won't, right?
Yeah.
What happens then?
So then it wouldn't be part of your proposal. They'd have to go out and do it
And
on
do it
their
on
own.
their
Right. So, yeah, I sent a letter to the chairman of the facilities committee asking that. I just handed it to you.
Thank you.
Sort of lay out the, asking the Board of Education to make it part of their proposal for the school. And, I think something this big, if you're doing a referendum to do improvements to the school, wouldn't it make sense to do, have a referendum to approve the shelter? I don't think they specifically talk about the finances. I think that was left open a little bit purposely. I know the town has talked about funding for other sources, so I think that option, how we fund it and how we handle it, is still details to come. I think the key is if the Board of Education accept this and want to go into a partnership with the town as having the school as a shelter, I think that's the most important thing. Then those other details, I think we need to work out.
Yeah, be my recommendation, Bill and I have had this conversation as well as I've had a conversation with Thank You Lions. That certainly we're open to the partnership, but we may want to ask the town to fund the cost because it would then keep it out of the referendum and keep the referendum costs lower. It is a potential use for the $5 million of funding they receive through grants. So I know that could be under consideration for that or other funding. It's Bill, did you provide the price tag?
I did not.
Okay.
I do have the money. We have a general estimate of 1.5 million for the generator. And it's a higher number than normal because you're going to have to modify the building to do the generator. The switch gear has to be modified. So that's a good budget number. But the details of how it's going to be built and how it's going to be finished and completed is not clear. We need a lot more design time on that.
So some of the referendum includes enhancements to mechanicals.
To the electrical, so we would take care of the electrical work.
So everything that's already in the referendum would stay the same. Anything over and above that, the town would incur.
That would be our suggestion.
Okay, that's our
versus
hope.
adding 1.5 million to the referendum cost.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that the committee was trying to keep it minimal. I think that we should relook at it once we agree on the concepts. Maybe we relook at it because we're talking about just the generator. Maybe there's a couple other things that they want to do to improve the school that have nothing to do with the school that might make it a better shelter, and that might not cost a lot more. Right. So I think the details of how we fund it and what we put into it and what we add to the school construction. And especially if we do it at the same time, to me, it makes a lot of sense. We'll get some, cost savings if you have contractors there doing electrical work and they have to do another $100,000 worth of work and they're already doing, $6 million worth of work. It's going to be a lot cheaper. Because in our proposal for the school, we have, significant money for renovating electrical, significant money for renovating the HVAC and, air conditioning the whole building. We also have the auditorium in there for improvements, so that's
I
always.
think any good shelter has a state-of-the-art auditorium.
And that's why this is the number one facility for it, because we have a shelter, we have we have an auditorium, 2 gyms, a cafeteria, locker rooms. It is our biggest facility that has the most options for taking care of the public if we're going to be in a shelter for a long period of time.
Happy, any questions? So do we make a motion tonight to ask the board to approve this, or do you just want us to bring it straight away to the board?
I have one question. Are we asking the board to approve having the town pay for it? Or are we just asking the board to approve having it be at Polson?
I think that is the primary thing that we're asking, especially since we don't have the bottom line financials right now.
Yeah,
All right,
the latter of what you shared.
Okay.
Do you feel like you have enough information to,
Well, the only thing I would say is when it gets to the board for approval, I think it would be good to have the financials as much as possible, so they have as much information as possible to approve, right?
So I do have the financials. If we wanted to go over those now, I could. So, the Polson shelter, they broke it down into two things. If we did it, stand alone, not with the town. If you don't want to do the shelter there, had nothing to do with your operation. It would be somewhere in the $8.5 million for the whole shelter. If we wanted to just do the shelter at the same time with the school construction, it would be $3.1 million. If we wanted to just add a generator, and this is what was proposed by the town working facility group, they suggested that we just add the generator and not the other amenities for $1.5 million. So that's what they were suggesting that we move forward with.
and one more question, sorry.
Sure, I can break it down even more.
No. Are the electrical enhancements that are already in the referendum enough to operate the generator? Or would $1.5 million and then any other electrical situations? I'm the daughter of an electrician, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I should be saying it better, but
so I think I can very clearly articulate.
Thank
We
you.
spend the $20 million that we're proposing for the renovations of Folsom School, heating and air conditioning. We would still need to spend the additional $1.5 million for the generator. And that, once again, this is a very rough budgetary planning dollar. This isn't a construction analysis with what we're going to specifically do. It's a square footage cost based on what we think a generator would cost to run this kind of building.
Those should make for a great coverage. Don't you
The
agree?
additional $1.5 million on top of the $20 million that we're proposing for the renovations.
Women in business. Oh, well, I just figured since you were here, this was
Happy, any questions?
my bad.
No?
You know you don't have a chance.
Dr. Cook, what helps you? Do you want this committee to make a motion to bring it to the full board?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve a recommendation to move forward with a new shelter and generator at Folsom Middle School. This option will make Folsom the primary emergency shelter for the town. In addition, we're requesting that the Board of Education coordinate the generator design with the proposed mechanical enhancements for the school.
Am I so moving?
Yes,
There's only two
it's
of
just
us.
me
So
and you,
moved.
friend. All right, I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And it does, I mentioned there as to who the committee members, if you were so interested, who they were on the Board of Education. I
Do you
mean,
want to know who the facilities members are? Happy?
Sure. Are there a lot of them?
Yep, Aaron Duquesne, Board of Selectmen, Justin Murphy, Board of Finance, Scott Murphy, Board of Selectmen, David Anderson, staff, Sam DeBurra, staff, and Bill McMinn, staff.
Thank you.
Can I?
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, no problem.
Okay, moving on to CIP.
So the CIP, I wanted to start off with July 1st, 2021. We're required to submit our 22-23
Jeez.
CIP plan, which is only 5 weeks away from Thursday. So I've already done a draft of the plan B because someone asked me about that. I'm like, oh no, that's already been updated. I looked at it like, wow, it hasn't been updated. So I updated it and I only shared it with one person in the room on the other end. I haven't shared it with anybody because it probably needs a little more work. I'm happy to to a draft of the proposed plan for 22-23 with the assumption that the referendum will be approved. But I definitely would like input from this committee. And so I'm requesting that we meet a few more times between now and July 1st, just on the CIP. I'm happy to do it Zoom so everyone can do it easily if that's what you like. I'm happy to do it in person. But I'm hoping that we could meet at least twice, if not more, if we need to finalize the 22-23 plan.
Great.
You guys are receptive
Let's try
to
and
that?
get it in before October this year.
Yeah,
We
so,
were a little late last year.
yeah, and you know, I want to, every year, we try to do a better job on it, but there's always a lot of things up in the air, and we still have the new school up in the air, but I think we do too. We do assume that we get it passed, and then assume that we don't. We'll have two plans.
So I'm going to suggest that Emily, who's the chair of this committee, work with you.
You said July 1, a hard deadline, or is that more of a soft deadline? I'm guessing it's a soft
So
deadline.
it's never been, other than myself, I don't think anybody's ever met the deadline. And the board, you know, I always do a draft one and then the board reviews it later. You know, they never start reviewing it until the fall. Maybe this is a new year. Maybe they're going to propose. I called the finance department, and of course Stacy's not in, but I talked to the second in command there, and she says we would really like it if you could. I think it's you know, it's important that we do, and I'm like, okay, you know, I don't question. I just want to comply with the rules if I can. And so I'm very receptive to backing off on the deadline, but I'm also pointing it out and suggesting that it would be nice if we got input, because I think really the last one I did was at the last minute. Really, the last one we did was 2019. And then we moved stuff out because of the referendum.
Right. We've moved stuff out every year I've been on standing.
Yeah, and some of the stuff I moved out at the last minute, I didn't want to. So I'd like to have a debate about it before I just move it out. So I, you know, really want to put some time and effort into it this year.
Okay, so we'll work with Emily and get some dates.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
And then if we can push it out, I think that's a great idea.
Where on the street is that Colonial Place?
So then what was just approved, July 1st, we'll have the funding for, of course, the security, the 75,000 for security. I'm working closely with Art and Dr. Cook. You know, we're mostly going to put some IT and cameras and some, you know, security enhancements that I'm happy to go into detail offline with. But that's where we're going to spend most of the money. We are doing some upgrades on some locks and some other things. Once again, I'm happy to go into the details, but we are every year spending that funds, and we have plan on having exceed the funds this year. You know, we've always had a little balance there. We'll spend that plus, and there's a grant that we're going to apply for, so we'll hopefully get some funding back. And I'll use probably some hardware money for some of the locks that we run out of money with, which is fine. I mean, you know, it's increasing the facility, making it safer. Two other projects, and I won't go into the details, but the front of Folsom and the front of Brown School, we're going to do the entry and the courtyard sidewalk area. That's what I'm calling it. I put an RFP out. It went out in the paper today.
Yep.
You did.
I did. I get alerts whenever there's a town RFP that goes out.
Nice. So if any board members interested, contact me. I can get you the RFP, and we're going to do a walk of Folsom and Brown entryways on June 17th at 9 a.m. School will be out. We're going to walk the sites. The RFP is for architectural services, finalized design. We have some schematic plans that we've been working on for a long time. I'm going to give them our schematic plans and ask them to finalize a detailed plan after interviewing the board if they need to, the principals of the school, myself, to come up with a really good plan for the courtyard, sidewalks, and entryway. And if need be, modify the offices. You know, I think we have some funding that we could do a really nice job making the front of those schools more look better, fix the sidewalks up, make them more secure, make it visually appealing and visually safer so that the staff can see in and see out. So that's the goal.
Those will be done this summer.
So the RFP, I'm glad you asked me that. The schedule is the RFP will select somebody this summer. And we'll do the design this fall. I plan on having the final construction documents completed before we go on break for New Year's. And we'll bid the project out over the holiday, we'll bid it over the winter. And hopefully we'll be awarding the contract in early spring for June, say 15th to August 15th construction. It's a 7-week construction time frame for summer of 22. It's a significant amount of work, and you know,
As we get into summer.
yeah, and so we'll be on top of it. I think it's going to be a nice improvement to those two schools. Other CIP information, the last year's CIP, we had the security as well. We were still working on security all the time. The stage lighting at the high school, we had the funding for the design. We sort of put that on hold because we moved back the lighting funding. So maybe we'll relook at that. So the funding for the design is on hold right now, but the funding's in place. The same with the locker replacement. We did the design. We actually did some samples. We put some samples in so we could finalize the design, but we moved the funds out for the auction of lockers at Folsom. So we did do the completion of the design though. The restoration of the parking lot at Brown School went really well. We completed that last summer. The furniture replacement we sort of put on hold. The shelters for the track equipment that we purchased that. You can see that if you go to the track, you see those big black sort of movable shelters for the athletic department. We're in the middle of confirming and purchasing the mats, the wrestling mats that were on the list for this year. We should have those this summer for fall start. The flooring and the wall pads for the gym we completed last summer. That went really well. And the portable shelters for the kids to sit in, because of the COVID, we sort of put that on hold. They're not going to sit together anymore. They're sitting apart. So these shelters that we designed, 3 or 4 years ago, would have them all sitting together on benches. So we put that on hold. So those are the updates of the last 2 years, this year and next year's CIP. I'm happy to take questions or discuss anything else on the other CIP issues that anybody has. All right, hearing none, we can jump right into the new high school, Folsom and Brown. Oh, I
You skipped
skipped
the
over
Jansen,
Jansen.
number
Friday.
3.
I see we have a little background noise. I didn't know if it was coming from the.
I think it's happy you have a TV going. No,
Running at home. That's why I put on mute. Sorry.
no problem.
So I'll jump right into the Jansen piece.
Sure.
So the Jansen property, we are continuing to look at. We did some investigation of the soils and some borings and studies of the property. I was interested in trying to see if we could connect the high school parcel to the Jansen parcel through that significant wetlands. I knew that everyone told me that it didn't make sense and we couldn't do it. And I said, well, I agree that it's not practical or probably probable, but I want to be confirmed because I didn't walk through the wetlands and I wanted somebody to look at it. So I think it was worth the time and effort, but the conclusion is that we probably aren't even going to be able to put a pedestrian walkway across. Are not. And I thought at minimum we were going to be able to do that. It just seems that the cost and the magnitude of doing that and the permits, and because it's a floodway and it goes over the Neck River and there's a flood zone there, and if you build something, it would obstruct the flood and it would back up, so it's just really complicated. It's not impossible. It just, the more I look into it, the more everyone was saying that it's not really feasible. It's probably not feasible.
So you're telling me it's a monorail?
Yes.
Okay.
If we did something really high,
Yeah.
if we did something really high up and over, like a monorail, like 16 feet in the air, no problem. I was thinking something like 2 feet off the ground, just above the wetlands.
Good save money. Yeah, monorail, that's right, all the schools.
So other than that, we still did the investigation on what utilities would look like, what kind of soils it is for construction, and what it would take to build a school on that site. So all that indication is very positive. And, came back that a traditional foundation could be built. We had some recommendations and a very detailed report on the soils. So at this point, I think, that's all I have to share about the investigation of the property. And I know that the first select woman is working on negotiations with the owner.
Yeah, that was the other update that we had for you was that, more negotiations have continued and we're now hoping to hear back from the owner shortly. And thank you Bill for arranging everything so quickly. He had everything lined up, so the minute we got the okay to do the testing, he immediately acted and it couldn't have gone any faster.
Great.
I think those contractors are very busy right now. So
Yeah.
Bill's relationships and his, ability to line it up was very effective.
Yeah, and I didn't know Colliers. I don't know all the people at Colliers until we started a business relationship with them, and they can't be better. I mean, the depth of their group is huge, and it's not just one guy. You know what I mean? I started using them for mechanical and analysis on our mechanical systems in 2010. That's what I thought their expertise were. Now we have Chuck Warrington who helps us with schools, and he knows these guys, and he hooked us up with those people. I just followed up, but his connection. Same with the towns using them for the Island Avenue school study, a definitely different group, and that's only 3 of their operations. So we're very lucky, I think, to have them in our backyard, and professional group, reasonable price. I think they're doing a great job. So they definitely helped out with this, and they are helping.
Were the results of this soil study encouraging enough to the Board of Selectmen that they wanted to continue reaching out? Okay.
Yes, I think it was positive, and that's the reason that we're moving forward with the negotiations, in my mind.
New school Folsom Brown.
So I don't know what we have to update on that. We
Really just, along those lines, what we had shared, we, as the board knows, we did a presentation last week to the public, got some feedback, some next steps. We've worked with a communication committee coming up in a meeting, also preparing some documents that I think address some of the major points. We thought of, one pager on all the different, issues or concerns or major items that came up. So like, why is this good for students? Why is this good for the staff? Why is it good for the community? All those items to kind of just handle in major bullet points that we can provide. And we continue to have conversations with PTO leaders as recent as today to talk about the project and how we're moving forward. So seems to be building some community knowledge of it. Relatively pleased with the numbers that turned out for
Yeah.
our online meeting.
That was great.
Did the Board of Selectmen ask us to take a position, the Board of Education to take a position on a preferred location?
So with what they had asked us to do, and it's already on the draft agenda for the 8th, was for the board to, thank you for bringing it up, Bill, for the board to basically ask the town to purchase the Jansen property. They felt that would be helpful to their efforts.
Yeah, and I think the presentation that was done to the board did the pros and cons. I think clearly articulate different issues. So
Okay. So I imagine that presentation will give us more details on the pros and cons to both sites.
yeah, we did it to the board just the other day, right? And it said,
Yeah.
I think that,
Well, for me, I think the hangup is, cost.
right. So if we
If
can
it
agree
doesn't
on that
have to be the
number
one-off, then
Yeah.
my opinion
for
changes.
$10 million, it doesn't. make
Yeah,
sense.
exactly.
For $1, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got it. So yes, hopefully they'll have an agreement soon, and that we could finalize that.
Okay. The wonderful carports.
So the carports
I
are.
can't wait to not have this on the agenda.
Yeah, well, The carports, the construction date is start June 15th to August 15th. I've been talking to them every week. They assure me they're on schedule, on time. The permits are just about approved. I anticipate not much construction the first month, and July 15th, the steel coming, and then to go right up very quickly. They assure me that they can make the deadline. I'm concerned about the steel, the material, the equipment. They assured me that they have it all lined up and that they're on it. So it's big time financially important to them, because if they don't make the deadlines, they don't get paid. And so it's definitely important to them. We're just going to buy. If they don't put them up, we're buying electricity from where we're buying it from now. If they put it up, we just buy it from them. We agreed to buy the electricity from them. So the only problem is that if they don't get it up by the 15th, then they're going to cause us some construction problems. That's our concern, and
Sure.
I very well and clearly addressed that with them, that's not acceptable if they hamper our educational program. So I'm on it. If I said I wasn't nervous about it, I'd be not telling the truth. But I believe they're a very reputable company. They've done a lot of these. I've seen them in other schools. I haven't had any problems yet. I don't anticipate any problems, and I'll be on top of it until August 15th.
August 15th even gives us a couple weeks of wiggle room, right? We don't start till
Yes.
after Labor Day.
Well,
Or before, just before.
it's not really the school, it's band camp and then all the athletics. So that is very busy campus before school starts.
Okay.
So that is a problem. And I told them if they do Folsom first and then they do the back of hand second, we could mediate that problem. Because Folsom and out there is where it all happens. So we definitely have some latitude and some flexibility if we have to, but I don't want them there after the 15th. It's just not something with construction, and is the last thing we want if we have to with school going or activities.
Any questions, Happy? I didn't ask you the last item, sorry. Anybody else? Do you have anything else before I move on to public comment?
No, I do not.
Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? Do we have anybody?
Nope, we don't have anyone.
Okay, so then can I get a motion from Happy to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, we are adjourned at 7:16. Thanks, Happy.